gas ourselves up, but we short on breath. Talking about we eating, but who we really cooking. Dreaming about greens, but ain't nobody looking. No land, no acres, no seeds in the ground. When the hunger hits, who's gonna be around? We starving every day, and it just ain't the food. Feeding the hood garbage, got 'em acting a fool. We flossing with rides, stunting with chains, but these bars we spitting just bring more pain. We guilty as hell, preaching all these lies, selling debt to the kids, and we acting surprised. We commercialize the pain, broadcast the grief, tell the youth to hustle, but hide the beef. We glorify the trap, invite them to the flames, just like Reagan brought the crack on planes. Back in the 80s when the streets got soaked, my people, my brothers, all got choked. Reagan said no trades, but we know the deal. He left us in the dirt, man, that shit was real. I was just a shorty watching it unfold, old enough to see how we got sold. War on drugs, but it was war on us. Cops on our necks, no love, no trust. They labeled us thugs, beast on the block, made us kiss the pavement while they cleaned our clock. Prison became business thanks to Reagan's game. Free labor is the truth in America's name. Slavery's dead, man. That's just a word. Read the 13th Amendment, it's still absurd. They lock us in cages, serving time for life. Double digits for wisdom, cutting sharp like a knife. I'm here to say, the chains in the air, it's time we break free, start showing we care. No more flexing for nothing, no more selling out. It's time.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. And before we get this show kicked off, I got Don Tripp, Gorilla Gang, and we'll be right back right after this.
Drum on the stick.
Yo. Trevor gotta introduce you to Pablo.
Hey, Chris, you made it.
Pablo.
Hey, 2C, you know how we rockin', nigga.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
All I know is dough. All I get is money. All these niggas fake and phony. Can't get nothing from me. If power in the 50, so don't force me, you ain't timing. Can't be mad at me cause your bitch just top me in her bunny. Let's go. It's early morning, bankroll. Be pop out in places you can't go. I was raised with killer to take souls. I ain't saying the things to the case closed. Yeah, I was raised with killer to take souls. And I ain't saying the things to the case closed. I ain't saying the things to the case closed.
And a nigga better keep their face closed. It's best give me some space, bro. Step inside the square, end up getting X'd out or KO. Don't play, ho. Young niggas in the cut waiting with their Draco on that hot shit. Gon' walk a nigga down and turn their case cold. Okay, so it's Mr. Fitz. None of you niggas ain't fucking with me. With the shit, I get your bitch and I have her best friend fucking with me. Course I'm different, plus I'm getting it. I'm the GOAT. Yep, I'm Billy. It's fucking sickening. I'm still flying. I'm chasing bread like a fucking pigeon. Lord forgive me. No, I'm tripping. J Fitz, he's something serious. On my grind, ho, keep in mind though I'm a cool nigga. I'm fucking ignorant. Sucker, listen. Usually I'm solo, but I got my brothers with me. And it's for life. Got it out the mud, nigga. We stuck in this shit.
I'm tryna get it, so I'm posted up in the kitchen. Standing in front of the stove, whipping it hard from south. I'm tryna run up my digits, so I'm selling both. I got no time to talk. If we not speaking on profit, then I'm getting lost. Cause you can get lined and chalk. Tryna block me on my come up, I'm breaking the law. Nigga, my time it costs more than a Bentley or Rollie. Cause my mama told me if it ain't about money, then don't let them hold me. And never do favors, let nobody owe me. Say you get money, then you gotta show me. Niggas wanna take me back to the old me. Back when I was wearing nothing but proing. Now I run it up, I'm keeping it low key. All the bitches wanna act like they know me. Pause. I got no time for bros. Cause I'm a shark in that water, I'm really unbothered. Unless you gon' give me them jaws. I'm not your regular artist, the important part is I'm raw and I get to the point. These broke ass niggas will follow you all way to hell when they see you rolling the blood. It's not.
I'm out here chasing that dirty cash. I be all through the city with dirty tags. You niggas loving these dirty hoes. I'm just trying to fuck her and make her mad. My niggas thuggin' and wanna crash. Swear if I point, that's a nigga ass. Climbing shit turned me a big dog. Little nigga with a big bag. They know from the jump I don't know shit. And I'm up in that bitch and I won't miss. I've been on my shit for a long time, but easy to jump on some dumb shit. Ayy, I ain't saying a thing till the case closed. And I'm watching for niggas that's plotting, stay far from the laws and all of these fake hoes.
I'm all about my case, so I put a stock on a Draco. Now I control all that recoil, I turn your hat to a halo. Rat nigga, get on my nerve. I don't play games with bitch, I'm injury reserve. I got some shooters right here on my team, ain't hitting all green if I give them the word. Try at your own risk, I'm anxious to get on some nonsense. I ready to count this chicken, but all my weapons came with a drumstick. Yeah, drum like 808, this AK came with a drum kit. White be shitting on all you hating that bitches, I feel like Johnny Depp. Money machine on common sense, if we ain't getting paid, that's dumb as shit. Bitch ass nigga can't stop me yet, keep metal on me like an army vet. Nah, they don't want nothing to smoke, but in case they do, I brought smoke grenades. I know life's a gamble, so I'm always wearing my poker face. Yeah, please step back 10 feet. Yeah, give me some open space. Nah, let's go get this paper. I touch more paper than a rolling tray. I might just load up my 357. I'm a oddball rule. Fuck you on the hallmark. Forgiveness is God's job, bitch.
That was Don Tripp. I want to start off with yesterday in the Public Safety Committee. There was a bill authored for crime of residential protesting. And should that actually be something that we have legislation and laws for? Me, myself, I have protested at numerous public officials, Red Wing Police Chief, Pete Orpit in Stillwater. I've done plenty of protesting in residential areas. And my thing of it is that there's people out here that don't understand that you're playing with people's lives, all because of some legislation or these year-old policies, ordinances, and a lot of them we don't even need today. But first, this is what I want to start with, and it's the crime of residential protesting established. And this was, who authored the bill was Walter Hudson. And so I really want to start with that, and let's get into that. So here is the Public Safety Committee hearing yesterday.
The next bill to come to the agenda is House File 2809. Representative Hudson, please come to the table with your testifiers. Representative Hudson moves House File 2809 before the committee with a recommendation is placed in the general register. Representative Hudson, before you begin your testimony, I understand you have an author's amendment coded A1 that updates the effective bill date. Would you like to move your bill?
I would, Mr. Chair.
And the amendment just states we're moving from 2025 to 2026. All in favor of adopting the author's amendment A1 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion prevails and A1 is adopted. Representative Hudson, explain your bill.
Thank you, Chair Novotny. Thank you, Chair Moeller and members. House File 2809 is about a simple principle. Every single one of us, as residents of this state and denizens of the United States, have both a moral and constitutionally protected right to the peaceful enjoyment of our property, particularly our homes. Home is where we retreat for respite, for restoration, for our most cherished relationships. Home is where we raise our children, care for our spouses, and for those of us who are so inclined, enjoy our beloved pets. It's said that home is where the heart is, and that's true. Our homes provide our peace. Our homes are our why. What we do here, we do to protect what we hold sacred at home. Unfortunately, while the vast majority of our neighbors continue to respect this principle, and our culture has traditionally regarded the home as a sacred space not to be violated by disruptive or coercive activity, there are few bad actors operating on the outer fringe of our society who've decided to opt out of common decency. In recent years, we've seen a troubling trend. Coercive agitators, cloaked in the guise of activism, deliberately targeting private residences, not to persuade, not to make a credible argument, but to intimidate the individuals and families who reside there along with their entire community. We've seen agitators camp outside Mayor Jacob Fry's home in Minneapolis. We saw a mob gather outside the home of a police officer and his wife, who worked as a member of the press, burning them in effigy and explicitly threatening to burn their entire city to the ground. And late in 2024, activists publicly threatened to create a disturbance at my own residence, and I know many other members have had similar experiences. That is not democratic discourse. That's not a conversation. That's not debate. That is personal intimidation. HF 2809 simply establishes that bringing a protest to someone's dwelling crosses the line into criminal conduct. It does this narrowly and constitutionally. First, it does not in any way ban or prohibit the petition for redress of grievance. There are a myriad ways in the modern world for people to express their discontent with either policy or personalities. People can protest at the Capitol. They can protest at City Hall. They can protest outside businesses and public officials' offices. But there are constitutionally recognized and longstanding time, place, and manner restrictions, and one of those restrictions properly ought to be each of our homes. Second, this approach is firmly grounded in Supreme Court precedent. In Frisbee versus Schultz, the court held that focused picketing at a residence may be prohibited because the home holds a unique place in our constitutional tradition. Third, the bill includes sensible limits, does not apply where a residence is also a business or public meeting place, such as the governor's mansion. And in the finest constitutional tradition, this bill protects everyone equally, be they police officers, judges, healthcare workers, private citizens, or elected officials. Anyone who becomes the target of coercive agitation is protected by this bill. We all deserve peace in our homes. HF 2809 draws that boundary clearly and lawfully. I ask for your support.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Hudson. Are there any testifiers in the chamber that would like to speak with us? All right, members. Representative Coran.
Sure, thank you. I appreciate the conversation, and I'm going to shock everybody by saying, Representative Hudson, I agree with you on some of the words that you said today, in that our right to protest, our constitutional rights, or I should say that the constitutional rights we have to free speech and express the things that we are not happy about is not what's happened at some events where people have shown up at homes. And we've already established, we're very familiar with this. People have shown up not to persuade, but to intimidate and threaten people. And that is real. That is very real. That is very recent. And I think I could probably speak for everybody in saying that that type of behavior is not what we're talking about when we're talking about protesting. What I do notice, though, is that in this particular bill, this bill isn't addressing intimidating or threatening behavior. We're not talking specifically about coercion. I'm concerned with constitutionality because of how simple the language is. I think that the idea that you're getting at here, that those of us who are elected officials, we had the conversation about peace officers. When people show up because they're mad about something, they're not necessarily trying to change your mind all the time. They're trying to make you feel something, and that something that you feel could be fear. And I've had this argument with press folks too, that no, I didn't give you an invitation to my home, so no, it's not okay to show up. If you do show up, it feels like a threat. And because I feel like a threat, like it's a threat, it is one. Period. Look at the events of June 14th. You don't have to look any further. We don't get to show up at people's houses unannounced. That being said, my concerns again are with the simplicity of the language, because it says a person who protests before or about the residence or dwelling of any person. And I've got constituents who live on busy roads and like to stand at the end of their own driveway with their own one-person protest on their own property. And I'm not confident that this protects their right to do so. So that would be one of my primary concerns with this. Other than I think just the generality as it is, I think is I don't think it would hold up to constitutional muster.
Representative Hudson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Curran. I appreciate your thoughtful, sincere, and nuanced expression of your concern about the right to privacy and the right to protest. These are important things to sort out. Let me walk you through my thinking of why this makes sense. First of all, this concept of people protesting at their own homes is something that I was introduced to today. It's nothing I've ever seen before. Protesting your own house seems like an odd activity, but apparently that's something certain people are interested in doing. If language exempting that or more closely specifying the type of activity that we're looking to prohibit would be acceptable to the other side of the aisle, I'd be more than happy to consider that. But I want to address this underlying conflation that I see, particularly expressed in the letter from the ACLU. And this is a pretty common, what I regard to be fallacious conflation of two completely entirely different concepts. One being the right to protest, the right to petition your government for redress of grievance, and the right to do literally anything else. And it has become quite common for people to engage in activity which is disruptive, perhaps even illegal, and then try to appeal to their right to protest and petition as a shield for that activity. So for an example, were I out to go walk out into the middle of the street and just physically obstruct traffic, that's a crime. I would be dealt with by law enforcement. But if I were to do so while holding up a sign with some contrived political message on it, now, according to some folks, that's a protected activity. Well, what changed? The effect of the underlying crime remains. It is still an illegal activity, and engaging in a constitutionally protected activity adjacent to that prohibited activity does not provide you with protection for the underlying crime. And yet that has become an all too common defense for folks who are engaged in behavior that, if you were to divorce it from their political messaging, would certainly result them in engaging with law enforcement, and appropriately so. So the question of residential protesting in terms of people showing up to your house in order to make their voice heard, the question I would have for folks who are interested in doing that is, why do you have to do it at somebody's house? If indeed your intention is merely to express your opinion about policy or personalities, to have your voice heard, to make a statement that's geared toward persuasion in our democratic process, then what does the added element of going to their house achieve that you can't achieve online, in front of City Hall, in front of the Capitol, literally anywhere else? And the only intelligible answer I can conceive of for that question is that your intention is to send the subtext that we know where you live. And that message is meant to be received not just by you.
I'm gonna stop it right there, because I do disagree with Walter and a lot of the, even Miss Curran, Mr. Curran, whatever the hell you want to call the person. I agree with their kind of take on it as well, because I don't know how many people go out in front of their driveways and are protesting some thing they believe in, right? I don't honestly, I don't see that very often. But I have protested, and here's the thing of it is, when you sign up to be a public official, you make your life public. I know people want to say, oh, well, you signed up for this. Nobody wanted you to go run and become a representative, become a lawmaker, none of that, right? So there's a difference between a public citizen, I won't even say a private citizen, and a public official, because you open the door for this. You open the door for people to be able to come to your house. And here's the thing of it is, because I want to talk about when I went to chief of police house in Red Wing. See, they try to bring me to court. They put an HRO on me over this. And the crazy thing, all the illegal stuff that happened was not me. That's the wild thing, is that it was never about accountability or even what's right, or because here is my thought on it. And once it became 10 o'clock, we were silent. We were silent. The only people that were really loud was the neighbors, was the residents of that community, that neighborhood, right? I want to say community, that neighborhood. There's video out there. I don't know if it's I know my page is gone from it. So I don't know if I even have the video or whatever, but maybe I'll look it up. But just to show people, because we stayed on the sidewalk, which is public property, and chanted and held signs. How was that? The crazy thing to me, and this is why I have such a problem with Republicans, and I kind of get where somebody had left a comment on Facebook, and I agree to a certain point with it, because we only have, here's the thing of it is, we have two political parties that are in power in Minnesota. We have the Democratic Party and we have the Republican Party. There is really not in the middle. They can say there's the Libertarian Party, but they have no power. I think there's maybe one city council person in Minnesota, in some city, that they why they can, I don't know. That's the thing to me, is like everybody's telling me like, oh, well, I'm a independent voter and I only vote on my issues or the things that I care about. And it's like, it's really not like that. Because if you I really, really, really have an issue. And a lot of people aren't going to agree with me. I know there's a lot of Republicans, since that's where I made myself. Nobody told me this was because of all the things that I've seen, and people that call themselves Democratic. I would see people that were, and I'm not saying it doesn't happen in the Republican Party either. That's what I want people to know. But when it really comes down to it, I can't be in a party that can't even tell you what a woman is, or they try to feed it to you that men can get pregnant, and it's like, dude, that's not true. Here's the thing of it is, a person can be what they want to be. I don't care. Once you close that door and you do sit sexually, it ain't none of my business. If I'm not with you, it ain't none of my motherfucking business who's sucking your wee-wee or who eating your cuckoo. You know what I'm saying? That ain't none of my business. I don't care, and I don't want to know. So, and I know a lot of people be like, well, it's about more than that. Is it really? Because it feels to me that people want to be accepted. They don't even care if people understand it, or maybe they just didn't grow up that way. So maybe it just takes a little bit of getting used to. Because I'll tell you right now, that's where America is. There's people that don't have a lot of understanding, are very not knowledgeable about a topic, or something that happens, like let's say in healthcare, when it comes to like I won't even say healthcare. I'll say when it comes to trans, people are, here's the thing that I want people to know, is because I hear a lot of, oh, you're transphobic, you're homophobic. No, I'm not. I don't care who you sleep with. I don't care what you're doing behind closed doors, because that's not my business. What is my business, or what happens in the city hall, or what happens at the state capitol. I don't care about none of this other shit that people be doing in their private lives. Their private lives. I don't care about none of that. You can go all the way back to when I've always called people out. It's never personal. I know a lot of people, well, your Cortez thing, no, it wasn't. That was not personal. Y'all see it as personal because y'all, here's the thing of it is that when Cortez went to jail, I already tried to distance myself. I distanced myself for a reason. And then shit happened. And I still try to be there. Even though I knew a motherfucker was foul, I still try to be there. Even though I knew they was foul as hell, I still try to be there. Still try to be a loyal ass motherfucker, and thinking that people in that whack ass movement who want to call themselves street niggas, who want to call themselves real niggas, to me are bitch ass niggas. And I'm just going to keep it real. Doesn't matter if it's Jonathan Mason, doesn't matter if it's Cortez Rice, Frank Nitti, all them Terry Willis. When are we going to be truthful and have a conversation of how these so-called black leaders have really screwed us over? Because it has not been about the truth. It hasn't been about what's right. It's been about what they can prove, or science, or I don't even know what the hell it is, man. I really don't. And it really, I can't say it really confuses me or fucks me up, because that's just how it is. And I think it's always been like that. You have one side of they've always had something to fight for. It doesn't matter if it was women's rights. That's why we had the women's suffrage movement. Didn't matter if it was civil rights for black people. We've done all that. We've done all that. But instead of trying to make it equal, we put black people further behind. Further behind. And we're the only, here's what I want people to know, right? Because I see a lot of people who claim to be Black American, and then you come to find out that they were here for chattel slavery, and they were immigrants. And we're starting to see a lot of that. Doesn't matter if it was Kai Cenat or Vic Mensa. But to me, those are celebrities. Those are people that got paid, who get paid for their opinions. People are going to say, oh, well, no, that's not how it is. Yes, that's how it is. I know people don't like to look at it like that, but yes, that's how it is. I think earlier this week, I did a podcast about nonprofits, and I sat here and played that, and I really thought it was a great conversation where protesters paid. Maybe not in the way that a lot of people said, but if you really look at it and you really follow the money, you see that these social justice issues that people fight for, they're actually paid to fight for. Even if they don't get results, even if they can't prove. That's why I noticed when it came to doing the right thing, because back in 2021, when the 3 babies got shot, in just a couple of weeks span, I really noticed that people I really thought cared about their communities really stayed away from that type of things that were happening. Now, if the police killed somebody, they were all over it. Now, if it was something that happened in our own community from our own people, then nobody wants to really fight for it, or nobody, shit. You look at all the leaders in over North Minneapolis, doesn't matter if it's Lisa Clemens or Jerry McAfee, all them people have been paid off of black pain and trauma. Jerry McAfee, a motherfucking snitch. And the crazy thing of it is, motherfuckers can read about it and they still don't believe it. That's what I really don't understand about Minnesota. And I know Missouri is the show me state, but what more do you have to really fucking see in Minnesota to be able to believe shit? To know that your so-called friends or your so-called allies are snake ass motherfuckers. That's why I really don't fuck with a lot of people in Minnesota, is because I will tell you right now, is I had to cut my grass in my yard to see who was really snakes and who was not. And I will tell you right now, is there's a lot of people out here that are snakes. They slither. They say, that's what fucks me up about Rochester, is you have people that say, like, CERT, but they don't want to talk about how their ties with Feeding Our Future or all this other kind of shit of how the fraud and waste has been happening in Rochester, Minnesota, and how they have profited off it. But they don't. That's what really fucks me up about Rochester. That's what really fucks me up. And the people that were fighting it, or who are still fighting it, and they're blackballed. We something, I don't know if it was a news, but they said that it was Rochester, Duluth, St. Cloud. Most of those areas are Democratic. Now, you go into the rural areas, because I will tell you, it was on KTTC the other night. They were talking about the representatives in this southern Minnesota, and it's highly Republican until you get to Rochester. That's where it's mainly blue. So that's why you see the people thinking that it's men dressing up as women are actually women, and that's not really the case. You can be who you want to be. I don't really care. It doesn't. It don't affect me. It doesn't affect me. I'm gonna be straight up 100. It does not affect me. So I don't really care about that. I know people are gonna say, "Well, you should." Why? Why? We have people out here that call themselves trans women, and yet we give them Women of the Year. We've tried to co-opt so much shit. That's what I don't understand is, even if you look back at through the movements, you can see something has always been co-opted. When it's gotten too powerful, it's been co-opted. That's what they've done to LGBTQ. And it wasn't about, here's the thing. I'm sure there's people, I've realized in the last couple of years, that I have cousins who are gay, and I still love them. Doesn't matter to me what you are. And they fought for that. That's why even when it comes to my cousin Willie Francis, and people say, well, it's the shit that really bothers me. That's the shit that really bothers me, because you can tell that some of these people have never had injustices happen in their families. You can tell that people aren't really fighting for something, ain't really fighting for change, because they've never gone through none of this shit. When it comes to really being poor, in Minnesota, in America, that's the motherfuckers that are silenced. The people that are on Section 8, the people that are on food stamps, those are the silenced people. Those are the silenced people, because I'll tell you right now, that's why you see Minneapolis, Rochester, because those are highly populated areas. And they're more progressive. I'm not saying Republicans are racist or none of that shit. You know what I'm saying? Because to me, they have conservative views. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. That's how most of us were raised. If you came from the Black community, especially back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, I know people are going to be like, well, that was a long time ago, and they don't really remember that. Well, you're just young. You're young. And the same thing that Hennepin County, Ramsey County, Olmsted County was doing back in the 60s, the 70s, and 80s to Black people, they're doing it now still today. Only difference is why it's so silenced is because the immigration community. We have so many immigrants. Doesn't matter if they're Somalian, Nigerian, Ethiopian, they're still Black. They're still Black. How is that not being Black in America have not been co-opted? Because we're the only population in the world that really doesn't have no understanding of where they come from, because most of us are mutts. I know that's probably a bad thing to say, but we have so many. And I realized that when my daughter, she did that 23andMe, and it came back with so much shit. They had your fathers, and then it had your mothers. And I was like, damn. So we don't even have an understanding of where we come from. Because I can tell you right now, going back into even my heritage and my ancestors, that's all, man, it's all fucked up. Because my his dad and his mom were different. His mother was Creole, and his dad was, I know he was in America, somewhere else, but like so much. And now we have people that think they're black, even though they might be Nigerian or Somalian or Ethiopian, and they still get called black. That's why we don't even talk about the black shit no more, because everybody's bunched into it. It doesn't matter if it's BIPOC, POC. We the farthest thing from just being black people anymore. I'm gonna be straight up serious. Even when I look at Walter, I see a black man, but I see a black man with privilege. I see a black man that has never had to sit here and scrap and fight. It's always just been handed to them. I'm gonna be straight up and honest. It's been straight up. He had choices. I'm not saying that I didn't, but the only choices that I had to see of how people were getting rich or how people got money where I grew up were drug dealers, rappers. Because prostitution was a big ass thing in my area. That's all you've seen. Pimps, prostitutes, drug dealers. Doesn't matter if they were basing it with the needles or the heroin, or you see the glass stem, niggas would be. And those are the people that came from there and actually want to live their life accordingly to God's law, God's eyes, and then even seen it in man-made laws. There's a lot of representatives that that we call them black, but have never, especially in Minnesota, they ain't never been the ones that we have here, the black representatives, besides Bobby Joe Champion, but he a crook. Latricia Vitaw, crook. And I will openly say that. That's why I don't understand of how they can go through a session and work with Democrats when you know that's all they want to do is bullshit. So let me get back to this because this is a half hour.
But by your family and by your neighbors and by everybody connected to you. And the purpose of sending that message is to coerce political decisions. And that is not how we do things in the United States of America or the state of Minnesota. We do not engage in coercive political activity. We engage in persuasive political activity. The mere act of going to somebody's house is inherently coercive, especially when tied to some demand for certain political outcomes. That is why I'm comfortable with the language as it stands. But again, I am willing to consider amendments that would address the concerns raised by the other side.
Follow up, Representative Corinne.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you for that, Representative Hudson. I still like the sort of the meat of the issue here. I think we're in a lot of agreement on in just sort of how this discourse plays out in the public and people showing up at each other's houses. I mean, I won't repeat what you said, but I agree with a lot of the sentiment that you have on this idea. I just, when it comes to, the basic concept that the Constitution protects, I say us, when I say us, I mean the people, the residents of the United States of America. The Constitution protects residents from government. And I caution us as a government body telling residents that they don't have a right to protest us in their own yard or in their own home. We could talk about, showing up at somebody else's place uninvited based on the position that person holds. I think that's a different conversation. But I think this bill in particular, it's really that basic constitutional concept that as residents, as citizens, the Constitution is supposed to protect us from our government. And when you tell constituents that they can no longer hold up a sign of however they feel about ICE as ICE drives by, they have a right to do that in their own yard. not blocking traffic, not disrupting anything. But I have constituents who live along prominent, travel pathways in my district, and they use the time that they have available in their day to protest the government, as is their right, and they do so on their own property. So that's really my concern with this, is that I just don't think it's getting at the issue that we're talking about here.
Representative Hudson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you again, Representative Grand. Again, sounds like a simple fix. Sounds like something we could absolutely address with an amendment to specify that constitutionally protected activities that occur in a place where you have the right to be are not intended to be impeded by this legislation. Perhaps that's the clause. We can turn to staff to figure out the best way to address that. Again, there's no intention here of saying that you can't have a sign in your yard. By God, how would we even campaign, right? This is very much about coercive, disruptive activity of the type that you know when you see. And the reason why I'm fairly confident that if this was passed as it is, it would not be in any way prohibitive of the type of personal activity you're describing, is because there would be no victim to complain. How do you complain about somebody doing something in your own property when you own it and it's your property? But be that as it may, tightening the language in order to affect that intent is something I'm in 100% agreement with.
Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Hudson, I think that I think there would be great agreement about what I believe you intend. I mean, a great concern that is shared about what I believe you intend here. I think the concern with the bill as drafted is that it either covers conduct that is already criminalized, or it goes much broader than what you are describing and intending. And I actually found it was interesting, the example you gave. You said if somebody blocks traffic, they violate the law. But if they do so holding a sign, well, now some people are saying they're not breaking the law. No, we look at conduct. They're still breaking the law. Now, they may choose to break the law in that way because of a long tradition we have of civil disobedience and recognizing there are greater injustices, going all the way back to flipping over the table of the money changers in the temple, right? Probably breaking some laws there. I'm kind of mindful of this today because of broader injustice, but it doesn't mean that the law was not broken. So we look at conduct. And what concerns me in looking at your bill is the conduct that you're prohibiting is, first of all, protesting. There's no definition. What is protesting? What does it mean if somebody protests in your bill that a court's going to apply it?
Representative Hudson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Pinto. If somebody's on your property, on or about your property, and they're standing there making a disruption and holding signs, I mean, we all recognize what protest is. Now, if you want to define it further, that's fine. The effect that we're getting after here is the intention is not what I would call either welcome or legitimate. Welcome and legitimate interactions are what should be taking place in our homes. People who we want to be there, people who we've invited to be there. And if we don't want people there, then they need to depart. And you're right, there is existing law that could affect this. We have trespass laws. Unfortunately, in order for those to take effect immediately, we would all have to have trespass postings in our front yards, and I don't think that's something we want to see in our neighborhoods. What if we're not home and there's activity taking place? What if our children are alone at home and there's activity taking place and nobody there who can respond to it appropriately? There's also the crime of disturbing the peace, which could be enforced. Unfortunately, again, I think that this premise is very common in our current political discourse, where we, under the fear of treading upon the First Amendment, we're unwilling to hold people accountable for the conduct that is objectively illegal under the law. I recall a conversation that I had with my city attorney when I was serving on the city council in Albertville along these lines related to the BLM protests that were taking place without permits, blocking streets. And we were very clearly advised, you can go back and watch it on tape, that you may in fact be violating people's First Amendment rights to uphold the laws as written because they are correlated to protest activity, to speech. That's the type of problem I'm talking about. If that's the way our attorneys and our law enforcement and our prosecutors are interpreting current law, then more specificity is required.
Representative Pinto.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Representative Hudson, if this becomes law and I charge it and I'm in front of a jury, the judge has to give instructions to the jury as to the meaning of the word protest. What you just said, that's a very, very, very long jury instruction. So I guess one thing I heard you say early on, like, are signs necessary? Like if somebody doesn't have a sign, so I'll assume that's a no, or I'm hearing a no. So it sounds like what I'm hearing you say is if somebody comes to your home and they are not welcome to be there, and maybe you didn't say these words, but sort of like, and they have some message for you in some way that they want you to hear, and it's unwelcome by you. Is that a protest?
Representative Hudson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Pinto. This is why I think it's important to have as broad a definition as possible, because if somebody is delivering a message, what are they handing me an envelope? Are they talking to me respectfully? That's not a protest. A protest of a domicile is going to involve encroachment upon that property for the purpose of very explicitly engaging in antagonistic communication. That's what protest is. The whole purpose is to express distaste with the target of your protest. That is not an appropriate activity at people's homes. It just isn't.
Representative Pinto.
Thank you. Representative Hudson, I'm trying to get my head around this a little bit. So if somebody's giving you, serving process to you, for example, like you have to appear, a subpoena to appear in court, and you do not want to appear there, you think the whole thing is completely just a total scam, right? They've got this thing, they're handing it over. So is that a protest? Seems like from what you said that would be. Just trying to understand the limits of your definition.
Representative Hudson.
Thank you, Chair Novotny, Representative Pinto. Obviously, engaging in any sort of lawful activity would not be considered a protest. So providing a service process is a lawful activity. A officer of the law effecting a warrant or doing a welfare check, that is a lawful activity. You're not required to welcome that. The other word that I used was legitimate. Those are legitimate activities. Showing up to somebody's house to scare their children, such as what happened to me last Friday, where I wasn't home for a couple of minutes, and I was a couple blocks away, and I get a frantic call from my kid, and he's clutching a knife in the kitchen, and I have to direct him to an interior space of the house, and then show up and figure out what's going on. That is not an appropriate activity, the way that was carried out, even though it was cloaked in legitimate purpose. There should be standards for how we engage with each other, particularly at our homes.
Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Representative Hudson, may I just say that behavior you described, completely unacceptable, of course. I think we're all mindful of our families and our lives, and I'm so sorry that your family experienced that. And I say genuinely, I would hope you would know, I and my colleagues, I think all of us are shared in wanting to make sure that we are all of us in Minnesota, not just in elective office, not just law enforcement, all of us are safe in our homes and safe in everything that we're doing. I have significant concerns about how this is drafted, and maybe I will just note, maybe just ask you at this point, there is currently a prohibition on targeted residential picketing, right? And also a prohibition on harassment and stalking. What is the gap in the law that is missing right now in terms of our current law, those current laws?
Representative Hudson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Pinto. Again, I would argue that there isn't a gap in the law as such. There is a gap in the way the law is being interpreted by the people who are tasked with enforcing it, whether they are law enforcement officers or prosecutors, and certainly folks who are advising others to engage in, and perhaps even organizing and funding targeted residential protest activities, where in spite of the fact that it is currently illegal to disturb the peace, currently illegal to block people's access to their property, currently illegal to harass people in their homes, again, there's this hesitation that I have seen firsthand, and I think we've all seen, from prosecutors and law enforcement to take appropriate action. I mean, we saw it right here in this chamber last year, early on, right? We had a couple dozen people lined up. We were sitting over there where you guys are, and they're right behind us, and all of a sudden they all stand up and engage in what is a crime under Minnesota statute. Disturbing the legislature is a crime. You can go to jail for it. Yeah, you would never know that because it doesn't happen. And the reason, and that's the problem, is merely having the thing on paper isn't enough. You have to have a clear understanding in the public, and certainly amongst the people who are tasked with enforcing it, of what the expectation is. And so what this does is it clarifies legislative intent. It takes all of those existing prohibitions and says, this is what we mean. This is one of the areas where you don't get to behave that way.
Mr. Chair, I'll end with this just to say let me think here. I guess I want to circle back to what I said at the beginning, is that we need to focus on conduct. Our law focuses on conduct. If you, Representative Hudson, are concerned about laws just written on paper and the folks interpreting them, this is also written on paper. If you lack that faith, then I don't know what changing laws does, right? So either way, there's going to be some laws that are written. And what I'm hearing you say is that our current laws actually do adequately cover this. The issue is those interpreting the laws and enforcing the laws. We'll have that conversation. We have got to focus on conduct. And as another illustration of the gap here, you heard about protesting in front of one's own home. I'll just note, this is talking about protesting around or before or about residents. Just a group that is walking down the street, as have been the protests against ICE, community members themselves expressing what's happening in their community as they pass in front of anybody's home. That is a violation of how this is written. So this is the way this is drafted is really problematic. Let's continue to work together to go after conduct, to identify it clearly and prohibit it, and happy to work with you as a prosecutor myself to make sure we follow through and make sure that's enforced in that way, to make sure that everybody in our state is safe. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Hollins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Hudson. I hate sitting here because I can't look at you while I'm talking to you, but thank you. I just have a couple of questions. I guess I'll put two of them together. So one, what is a residence or dwelling when it comes to things like Airbnbs? Does that count? Because it says unless it's being used as a business, and Airbnbs are being used as a business, right? So that's one question. And the second one is, it's not clear to me from this language whether you have to be on the property. The sidewalks in most cities are owned by the city,
Right.
not owned by the person. And
Right.
sidewalks are public property. We know this because we had long conversations about
Right.
cannabis usage on public property, on city property, as opposed to in one's own property. And so my concern is when you're saying you cannot protest in front of someone's residence, but the protest is in the street or on the sidewalk or they're going somewhere, does that count as a protest on the person's residence? So I'll stop there, and then I've got one more.
Representative Hudson.
Thank you, Chair Devaney, and thank you, Representative Hollins. So I'll address the first point first. So you bring up a great example, Airbnb. My hope would be that that would be covered, and perhaps that's another amendment worth considering, because again, the purpose of, even though that is a business as such, the purpose of showing up in a domicile-like space to engage in coercive political activity is precisely the sort of thing that this bill is intended to address. So perhaps there's a gap there that needs to be filled. And I really appreciate you bringing up this concept of public property. This is another one of what I regard as fallacies that seems so popular in our political discourse today. It's public property, so I can do whatever I want. When has that ever been true anywhere? You go to the park, they got a sign there that says, these are all the things you can and cannot do. These are the posted hours. You go to a library, you fall asleep in the corner, they're kicking you out. You don't get to say, oh, it's public property, so as a member of the public, I just get to do whatever. We have prescribed public uses for our public property. It's why there's a fence with razor wire around the airport, right? And so merely citing the fact that you're standing on the sidewalk or you're standing in the street, again, just like with holding the sign in my previous example, the fact that you're in a public space does not translate to license to engage in disruptive criminal activity. So if the purpose of what you're doing on the sidewalk or in the street is to engage in intimidation and political coercion, yeah, that should be illegal. And indeed it is. And again, this is a problem with enforcement. This notion that keeps getting tossed up of, oh, what if there's 100 people who want to walk down your street to protest? Well, do they have a permit to do so? Have neighbors been notified? I mean, I gotta get permits. Again, I was on a city council. People have to get permits to like have a party for their kids. Give neighbor notices that this is coming and you might want to be ready for it. You got to do that as the person who lawfully lives on the abode, but we're just going to allow strangers to just go down disrupting the neighborhood randomly because they decided so? None of this is novel. Now, I realize it counters a lot of the current narratives of what is considered legitimate protest activity. But that's precisely the type of thing that I'm trying to end. We should be safe and at peace in our homes, not subject to somebody else's disruptive whims.
Representative Hollins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Hudson. So as I understand it, then you are basically saying that not just targeted protesting of an individual in front of their house, you're effectively saying that all protests in residential areas would be illegal.
Representative Hudson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Deferring to Representative Pinto's previous point, it's already illegal.
No,
yeah, it's illegal. It's illegal to block the street, right? It's illegal. Sidewalk. Okay.
Let's keep our.
So 100 people are going to just meter down the sidewalk, center file. Yeah. Okay. Sure. That's how these things manifest. And this is another thing I've noticed in the kind of the broader public conversation about this is that the hypotheticals have to get more and more absurd for the argument against the policy to continue. This is not how protest actually manifests. It manifests in an intentionally disruptive process intended to prohibit people from being able to go about their business in peace. 100 people in the road is an illegal obstruction. That's why you have to have a permit for a parade. Why do these rules only apply to the people who are willing to abide by the law and they don't apply to people who have a political grievance, as long as it's the right kind of grievance? They get to do whatever they want. That's exactly what I'm pushing back against.
Representative Hollins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure how to respond to that because it is exactly what I'm talking about. There's a reason why we had to have discussions about where cannabis usage was allowed, because it is public property and there are rules around it. And when you have this broadly worded piece of legislation that is saying that it is illegal, and protests do happen on the sidewalk, maybe not in the suburbs, but in the cities they certainly do. And I'm really not trying to like throw a loophole or something. I'm really just trying to understand what your goal is. But I'm going to move on from that because I liked a lot of the words that you were using: antagonistic communication, coercive acts, that people who come to your house should be welcome and legitimate. And at the risk of going a little off topic here, as a person who was followed by ICE to my home that they looked up and told that they know where I live and that I better watch myself, it is hard for me to see that being reflected in the words you're using, and yet nobody has come to me and said, yeah, that was wrong. That was coercive. That was, antagonistic communication. Like, this is something that they were doing to intimidate me. And I am curious if what you are putting into law, or what you are hoping to put into law, would apply to federal agents.
Representative Hudson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Hollins. The short answer is no. And the reason why is, of course, the Supremacy Clause of the United States, which, under the enumerated powers that the states grant to the federal government, which include immigration law and immigration enforcement, the state of Minnesota has no jurisdiction to place restrictions upon the activity of federal law enforcement officers. The second reason would be that, as a broad category, law enforcement has rights that the rest of us don't in order to enable them to affect their role of enforcing the law. Now, you want to get into the specifics of what you describe and how you were treated, we can perhaps find meaningful agreement on the inappropriateness of some of those elements. Absolutely. I would not conflate legitimate law enforcement action with residential protesting.
Representative Hollins.
I'm sorry, Chair Novotny.
I'm just hoarse.
What's that?
I said it just sore throat.
Thank you, Chair Novotny. Thank you, Representative Hudson. I appreciate that sentiment. And I guess I would say, yeah, the big difference is the people who were in front of my house have full body armor and are seriously armed. And you're talking about people with signs.
Representative Hudson.
I don't have a response to that. Would you like me to close, or were there more member questions?
We have other testifiers. Representative Feist.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to read the language of the harassment statute, because I really think, like, I'm, former ACLU of Minnesota board member, kind of First Amendment purist, also a legislator who has experienced a lot of fear over this interim. So I understand what you are getting at here. But I do believe that the language that we have in law is really good. So targeted residential picketing, which is considered harassment, includes marching, standing, or patrolling by one or more persons directed solely at a particular residential building in a manner that adversely affects the safety, security, or privacy of an occupant of the building. And then, and it includes like the same type of activity, but like making it hard for you to access your home. I like that language because it talks about it being directed solely at a particular residential building. And that gets us out of any point of confusion over like spatially, where are you? Are you walking by? Are you on your own property? So I would suggest that if you're concerned that the state of the law is not adequate, like it's not being enforced adequately or understood adequately by law enforcement, I would, rather than this very broad language, I think that we could amend the existing harassment statute to try to achieve your goals. And so that was what I wanted to suggest. Thank you.
Representative Hudson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Feist. It's an intriguing idea. Let's talk about it.
Representative Whitty.
Thank you, Chair Novotny. To get to Representative Curran's question, there's a possibility of throwing on the first subdivision, or Section 1, Subdivision 1, where it says dwelling of any person may be put other. So it's not, it's identifying that it's not if you're out in your own property, that's fine. It's going to other people's property. And the example I will give is the late Pete Orbit. After he was given a case, he got picketed and stalked around his house, and his neighbors couldn't get through the neighborhood. So I think we clearly know what we're talking about when it's targeted compared to non-targeted. So I appreciate the efforts. I'm just trying to help clarify it. Seems like you're willing to work through it, but I do remember that, what happened to him at that time, and it affected him, his family, his neighbors, and he was just trying to do his job.
I want to say something because I was one of those people that went to Pete Orbit's house to protest. We had church over there. We had other things, chanting. There were some people that put signs in his property. But to be honest, his neighbors got out of line. There's a video out here that his wife was fired, and The also the guy, the husband, he worked at Stillwater. He was fired because of how they acted out in public. So I don't. To be honest, I didn't think they really thought people would go out to Stillwater and protest. It was the same way that we went to Kimberly Potter's house. We went to Derek Chauvin's house. I've been to Mayor Jacob Fry's. Uh, even been to Reggie Edwards and Mankato. So to me, if you are, and to be honest, I'm gonna sit here and say something is that Reggie Edwards was the city manager. He did get fired I think it was this year, last year, from Brooklyn Center. So if you send, here's the crazy thing of it is, right? People think that it's okay. So my thing of it, I want to say this because I have protested in residential areas, and I will continue to protest in residential areas, and there's no way around that because that is my right, and I'm going to keep on doing that. I've been to plenty of officials' houses, even some of their businesses, but it's all been peacefully. I haven't tried to break any laws or try to get on private property. It was all done on public. I didn't try to, only time I ever tried to get in the streets, that was me by myself in front of Derek Chauvin's trial. And I impeded traffic. I obstructed traffic because I'm out here on a public street protesting and you have people driving by saying the N-word. So I went out there. I did get arrested, but I went out there and I don't care. I went and sat down. Because in my eyes and the way that I feel about it is by any means necessary. And I know a lot of people don't agree with that, especially when it comes to Republicans, because they do have they don't believe in a lot of the things that Democrats are willing to, they're not willing to do a lot. Democrats are willing to at least that there's a thin line between that shit. Maybe not as Republicans, but Democrats do. And I do feel like that's why you see such a difference when it comes to Republican legislators and then when it comes to Democratic, because of course they're from different areas. And like Holland said, is that you do see a lot more residential protest in the cities. Now, when you go up to the suburbs, they don't see that type of shit. So yes, of course they're going to be intimidated. But even though that's our First Amendment right, is to protest in public places. Like, and I will say this is that no justice, no peace. I know Republicans don't agree with that. But I do feel like that's the only way that people take you serious is when you interrupt the day, the how people are day to day. You stop. I mean, it's the same thing of how they did with the bus picket. You know, that's the only way that people do listen is when you protest and you make people. It's called peaceful disruption for a reason. Peaceful disruption. Not everybody's going to like it. Yes, you're going to interfere with some things. And yes, there may be a risk of going to jail in some of these situations. Just like when we went out to, well, first of all, I seen that it didn't really matter when it came to I-35. But when we overtook I-94, that was the biggest mass arrest in Minnesota history, 646. There were 646 people that were arrested on I-94 that night. Was it right to overtake the highway? No. But when you're trying to make a statement, that's the only thing that I will agree with. When you're trying to make a statement, because a lot of things don't work. We have people that are sitting behind bars, sitting in prisons and jail and being innocent. How many people have died in America off of death sentences where didn't do anything? But yet they were electrocuted, they were given the needle, even though they were innocent, didn't do a motherfucking thing, but just were black or poor. And we think that's accountability? That's justice? How are you supposed to protest against that? If they are willing to, here's the thing that I always say, right? That made me, in my mind, I knew there was chances of going to jail. And here's the thing of it is, from 2020 to 2022, I had over 30 charges. And I only got found guilty on a couple because a lot of them they couldn't prove. Or I wasn't doing anything wrong, but they still wanted to charge me with something. Even though I wasn't even there, or that's not actually what happened, I was still charged. Was it right? No. It's not against the law. And that's the thing that I don't understand, right? Is how are you supposed to protest? Because I do try to keep it peaceful, but how can you keep it peaceful when the people that you are protesting against are violent? How do you protest against that? How do you protest against police brutality? Yeah, people don't want to talk about that. I do want to go on to Pam Altendorf has a protest going on right now. And I don't know if it's over, if it's still live, but I want to show that. So I'm going to switch over to that. It's Pam Altendorf and some other.
Bill, because the states are getting federal dollars, and we want to make sure we're distributing accurately to the people who need them, who are not dead. You know, as I said, other states, you know, found people that were dead that were still receiving benefits. This is just a good governance bill, and I think most Minnesotans would really appreciate trying to find this on the front end instead of trying to prosecute fraud later once it's been abused. The system's been abused.
Right. Let me go back and start this from the beginning.
Would you need additional?
Yeah, that's like 11 minutes.
West, co-chair of the Children and Families Finance and Policy Committee. And I am joined here by several members to talk about a bill being brought by Representative Altendorf. So as you know, our state budget faces some deficits, both in the near and the long term. And those deficits could be made even worse if we don't get our SNAP program under control. And what we've seen recently in Minnesota welfare programs is a lot of exploitation. So what can we do about it? We're not just going to sit here and complain. We're going to offer some solutions. So number one in this bill that we're bringing up is it puts the net income test at the front of the process. Currently, you can use gross income to qualify, but then you use net income to determine your payment. Moving net income to the front of the process, which might sound boring and in the weeds, that will help ensure less overpayments. Because right now, with our SNAP error rate, around 2/3 or more of it is from overpayments. So counting these deductions, making sure we are giving help to those who need it is incredibly important, both to ensure those who need the support are getting it and to control our state budget. Second, it aligns the SNAP program with the asset testing that we do in many of our other programs. That, to me, is common sense, because what we've seen is exploitation in our welfare programs, whether it's fraud or just people who don't need it receiving the support. The one difference between this asset test and the others is a exclusion on vehicles over $100,000. And I have to say it, you know, you may love your G-Wagon, but if you need taxpayers to pay for your food, it's time to sell your G-Wagon. And you would be
Right.
surprised how often our welfare programs have people who have plenty of assets, but still are on the program. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce the author of the bill, Representative Pam Altendorf.
Thank you, Chair West, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I am very proud to be authoring this bill that is what I would call a very good governance bill moving forward. In the state of Minnesota, we are seeing records amount of fraud across our state, and it has just been an epidemic that we've seen over and over in the news. The U.S. Attorney Office recently estimated that we have as much as $9 billion of fraud across 14 Medicaid programs. And of course, these are our welfare programs that we have in place that we need people to get, that people need these benefits. And when they're being exploited fraudulently, it hurts the people who need it the most. The SNAP program, just in 2013, Minnesota, we had an error rate that was close to 4%. Now, just a little over 10 years later, our error rate is at 9%.
Damn.
To be clear, the federal government has paid for SNAP. It's a 100% federally funded program. And so the state of Minnesota does not have any skin in the game, you could say. It's administered by the state of Minnesota. The counties are administering it. However, the federal government has fully paid for the SNAP program. With the big, beautiful bill that passed through Congress, there is now going to be consequences for states. And I think most people would look at this as a very good business model, a business decision. If there are states who are not administering this program effectively, it is hurting overall all these federal dollars. Right now, as I said, Minnesota is at a 9% error rate. Moving forward, in 2027, to give you an example, we have approximately 440,000 Minnesotans who receive SNAP benefits. And that equates to $875 million per year. If we do not get our error rate under 6%, the state of Minnesota would be held accountable for $86 million in the year 2027. And that, frankly, is not acceptable. And that is why I am offering this bill. My legislation will address the main reason of the SNAP payment errors that we're finding. A Government Accountability Office report looked into this issue and found that the policy that states opt is called Broad-Based Categorical Eligibility, or BBCE. That's the main driver of this payment error. And as Chair West mentioned, we're not proving eligibility prior to putting them on the program. So this is a simple fix. It now provides that for government employees, they will be able to determine eligibility prior to receiving the SNAP benefits. A very interesting story you may have heard, there was a millionaire from Minnesota, Rob Undersander, and he tested this years ago and applied for the SNAP benefits, and he received them as a millionaire, proving that the system is broken and proving that Minnesota does not have the checks and balances in place that we need to have an effective system. 78% of voters think that there should be income and asset limits to receiving SNAP benefits. This is a popular bill, and again, I'm calling this a good governance bill because every state should be expected to administer this program in an effective way without wasting tax dollars, and that is just not happening right now in the state of Minnesota. And one other story I just wanted to bring to your attention. I didn't see it get covered much in the Minnesota news, but earlier in this month, in February, there was a woman from Minneapolis that the U.S. Attorney Office charged and convicted for $325,000 of SNAP fraud. And so there is a problem, and these are the kind of instances that we would catch on the front end instead of later trying to charge and convict once we're in a case where there's actually fraud that's happened. We would help to root this out at the front end. Is there any questions?
What about bipartisan support? I know this morning the Office of Inspector General bill, which had bipartisan support in theory, had a tie-me dies, the old phrase, vote. Will you have bipartisan support because you obviously need it in the House?
I absolutely would think that the Democrats would fully support this bill. I will be reaching out to them. We just had this bill. I literally just got it on my desk yesterday, so it hasn't been dropped, and I haven't been able to reach out to have them, co-sponsor it. But again, I think as Minnesotans are struggling all across the state with seeing wasted tax dollars and struggling themselves, they just are wondering, where are the checks and balances in our state? And this is such a good bill that it's going to provide that moving forward. And it's just common sense legislation that I would see no reason to support. And also, we kept the eligibility really high. We're higher than other states. And we want to use this as a stepping stone. We want to help people out of difficult situations. It's not to penalize people who are on SNAP. So none of that. We want to help people out of their circumstances and help them make better lives for themselves.
I just want to add one thing to that is, we have to address the error rate. This might not fix it by and all that from the federal government, but we're presenting something that can move us closer to getting our error rate where we don't have to face those. And this is one piece of that. We welcome the other side of the aisle to develop ways that we can bring the error rate down.
This error rate you keep talking about, I mean, a lot of it is just kind of like slight overpayments, slight underpayments to SNAP recipients. Besides the instance you mentioned from 2018 and the U.S. Attorney's Office instance from earlier this month, do you have any other specific examples at all that there's actual fraud being committed in the SNAP program?
So in the Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins, they asked all of the states, when the Trump administration took over, they asked all of the states to help clean up their SNAP rolls. And 29 states complied with that. 21 did not. Minnesota is one of the states that did not comply with that. In the other 29 states, I have the numbers here, but there's, right here, 500,000, so in 29 states, 500,000 received double benefits, 350,000 are receiving SNAP benefits from multiple states, and nearly 200,000 people were found dead, but someone was still receiving the benefits from SNAP. So when we're not complying with the federal government to help assist us to clean up our SNAP rolls, there's no way that anyone with common sense could see this as happening in 29 other states, but Minnesota is immune to this happening. So we have seen a huge increase in SNAP issuance over the last several years, a 40% increase, and so we need to be diligent and make sure that the people who are receiving the benefits are the ones who want and need the assistance and are not doing through a fraudulent manner.
Have as a lawmaker to kind of force the hand of either the U.S. Department of Agriculture or counties in Minnesota and try to get the information for yourself as to if there is any fraud being committed in SNAP other than these one instances we know about?
We can always ask the Department for information, and we are working on acquiring as much as possible to build the case. But in particular, we have to get this error rate down. So the fraud issue is a humongous problem in what we've seen, particularly other programs, and we're looking into SNAP. But the error rate, regardless, some of those are administrative, as you mentioned, we have to address that. Even say we do address it, we're still going to be in a tough deficit situation. So with the added 86 million on that, this is something that's really important.
Is there extra incentive to try and catch fraud at all levels on the front end now with all the resignations in the U.S. Attorney's Office too?
Yeah, that's really what these programs are being set up to. And like I said, I really call this a good governance bill because the states are getting federal dollars and we want to make sure we're distributing accurately to the people who need them, who are not dead. As I said, other states, found people that were dead that were still receiving benefits. This is just a good governance bill, and I think most Minnesotans would really appreciate us trying to find this on the front end instead of trying to prosecute fraud later once it's been abused.
Right. That's a definite. Um, I want to go into. Actually, you know what? Let's go to this one. So they're already trying to make it a sanctuary state. I don't want people to get shocked or be like, "Oh no, they're not." Yeah, they are. So once again, you had DFL senators, not Republican but Democratic, uh, propose the North Star Act again. That is to make Minnesota basically a sanctuary state. It is a proposal backed by members of the Minnesota Democratic Farmer Labor Party that would prohibit state and local governments from using public resources to assist in federal civil immigration enforcement carried out by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The measures would, the report continues, reinforce constitutional protections, particularly by the Fourth Amendment's guardrails against unreasonable search and seizures, prohibit state and local agencies from sharing non-public data with federal authorities for the purpose of enforcing civil immigration law, bar their use of state funds, facilities, equipment, or personnel to assist ICE in arrest or departments tied slowly to civil immigration violations. Um, as the Sanhan Journal reports, the legislation was first introduced by lawmakers Representative Sandra Feist of St. Paul and Senator Omar Patel of Minneapolis in 2024, but did not gain traction and was never heard in committee in either chamber. That might be because it was incredibly unpopular. Our March 2024 Thinking Minnesota poll found that the proposal to prohibit any Minnesota entity from cooperating with federal immigration authorities is opposed by 59% of respondents, with 47% saying they are strongly opposed. To be honest, I'm opposed. I'm opposed to anything what has to do with sanctuary policies and trying to keep it where Minnesota isn't in. I don't know how I feel about that, right? I do feel about this. If you came to this country, doesn't matter if it was TPS or if it was some other kind of status, you should honestly, if that status had expired or ran out and you're here illegally, and doesn't matter if it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and you still haven't tried to, and I know then in my eyes that you shouldn't be here. You shouldn't be here. I'm going to be 100% honest, because that's where a lot of this has come from. You see, just yesterday they arrested a DOC employee that was here illegally. I don't know how the hell he got a state job, but we have seen that over and over. We've seen a guy down in Iowa become the Minnesota superintendent of a school district. So to be honest, I don't know. They definitely need to do something different because it ain't working. The e-verifying isn't obviously working like it's supposed to. Even people that are doing background checks, what does the background check really check? Does it check if people are here illegally? Does it check if um, I don't, to be honest, I don't know. I know I don't pass them because I have a lot of felonies or whatever, but that doesn't make those felonies were shit. My last one was of like actually committing a crime, and I actually didn't commit a crime, but it's like all the way back in 2004. So that's 20 years ago. I'm not saying I haven't been to prison since, because I have. Um, but a crime of doing something to other people or just living that kind of lifestyle of to keep on doing things wrong. It's been a while, and I hate to say it. I shouldn't say I hate to say it, but I've been a work in progress. I haven't always done the right thing. I haven't always did what's best for others. I always thought selfishly. I'm not like that anymore. And I know people say that, well, you once a cheater, always a cheater. And it's like, that's not always true. People do change. People, I think that's the thing that is America is great about, is people giving people second chances, giving people redemption. You know what I'm saying? I think that's what America is about, is being nothing and then turning that nothing into something. And I think a lot of people are trying to do that. But if we have to do it off the backs of politics, is that really helping us? Is DEI? Like, if we're not going off of merit and we're just going off a person's skin color, that's not really, we're not getting the best hires. Could be actually getting the laziest hires, but just because they have the college degree doesn't make them the best candidate. It means that maybe they're indoctrinated into a certain system. That's all that simply means. Like, when people say they have a degree, doesn't matter if it's political science or education. To be honest, I think doctors are the only one that actually need all that extra training when you go into like specialized shit. I mean, like, I gotta be serious. It was even something that my physical therapist said the other day, that because I always said, like, no pain, no gain. Well, they try to get me, shouldn't say try, because they've actually gotten away from that saying. So now I want to be uncomfortable, because that's what strives you to go further, is that being uncomfortable. Because I always said, well, no pain, no gain. But if it's pain, are you actually gaining anything? So I really had to look at my recovery, even when it came down, because I wouldn't say nothing, because I always, in my mind, no pain, no gain. But actually, if you're feeling that pain, it's because, one, you're maybe not doing something right, or you're did it in a rush. So instead, now I would like to take things slower and make sure that I'm crossing my I's and dotting my T's. So I think that is a big motto or saying that people, sometimes like to live by. But if you're actually making sure that you're feeling pain, are you actually gaining anything from that? Are you actually gaining from that pain? So one more thing that I wanted to look at a little bit too was Kristen Robbins did something about with Fox News or whatever. And I know people are going to say, well, Fox News is a Republican, it's a right-wing media. And it's like, come on, I'm really not trying to get into all that. And I know that we literally break shit down to Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, Green Party. Fuck all that. We're human beings at the end of the day. And I understand it, that this is the world that we live in when it comes to politics. You're a part of something. You have conservative views. Doesn't make you a Republican, doesn't make you a Trumper, doesn't make you a part of MAGA. Just means that you believe in values. You have morals. And I'm not saying, because I am saying this, because some Democrats, I really do feel like, or even leftists, whatever you want to call them, I really do feel like don't have any morals. If you can sit here and how serious of a state are we when we've elected people cosplaying other genders and then trying to change laws to make it where they're more comfortable? Is that what we really want in America? Is that what we really want in Minnesota? Because that's the place where we're at. And I think that people, what's crazy is you go back into time. I think You look back at the legislation, you look back at ordinances, or even like these 2030 agendas or 2040 plans. This shit was in works for years. Some of these plans have been 20 years in the making. So people had 20 years to actually wake up and do something. And instead, they didn't. I was one of those. Here's the thing of it is, it took me seeing a video of George Floyd, and I seen it that the night that it happened, it was live. Same thing that I seen with Brian Quinones. I saw that live. But it didn't draw me out. Something what George Floyd did, I know what it is now because I have a connection with that area. That's where I grew up. That's where I was, raised in Minneapolis. Went to school not very far from there. This was an area that I grew up in, went to the gas station or went to Cup Foods. These are places that I've actually been, I've actually grew up in. So I had more of a connection. But then when I started to see that, like all these people wanted to call themselves Black Lives Matter, or they were Democrats or socialists, and they wanted this, they wanted that, but they wanted to do it with handouts. They felt like the government owed them. Yes, I do feel like if anybody in this world, in America, is owed something, it's the Black people. Because I will tell you right now is that's the only culture in America that started from nothing. That started from nothing. And yes, we did. We came a long ass way. Are we there? Hell no. We're not even anywhere close. But I think every era, every generation makes some kind of progress. This is just a generation that instead of going forward, we've gone backwards a little bit. Because how can you compare ICE to the Holocaust? You compare them to Nazis. We're calling the ICE secret police. Like, what are we doing? Like, we're actually trying to segregate ourselves by labeling us, by labeling each other, all because we might not have the same political views. Maybe we grew up with a little bit more responsibility and being accountable, because sometimes it is tough to look in the mirror. But if you can look in that mirror and you're pushing for a better America, I won't say America, but a better Minnesota, a better Minneapolis, a better Rochester, there's nothing really wrong with that. So let me play this video. Here's Kristen Robbins on Fox Business Live.
State lawmaker Kristen Robbins. Even more waste discovered in the state. Democrats blew $730 million of taxpayer money on their new state office building. It's being called a palace. This is amid a massive, estimated up to $30 billion fraud in the state. Now, Governor Tim Walz has demanded taxpayer bailouts for things like ICE raids. Let's talk to this representative right now. Bring it back into the show, Kristen Robbins. Kristen, we always love having you on. Thanks again for joining us. Can you describe for viewers what's going on here? They're only in session 5 months a year, and they're demanding a palatial office with a grand glass entrance and a swanky atrium. What's happening?
It's unbelievable. This has actually been going on for several years. When Democrats had full control, they passed this bonding bill to double the footprint of our state office building, which is just where our state Minnesota representatives work. And it is doubled in size, and we're only open 5 months a year. And it's $730 million to remodel this one building. It honestly did need some HVAC upgrades and some safety upgrades, but $730 million for one building. I've been talking about this and trying to fight this since it happened. We call it the palace for politicians. Minnesota citizens do not want this. And when you look across our state, you don't see any cranes. Nothing's being built here except for this palace for politicians. We should be trying to encourage private sector growth, not growing state government. And this is the worst example.
Kristen, why do they need a new building? I mean, it's almost as big as the Federal Reserve.
Oh, it's shocking. So we have, like maybe 15 years ago, all the senators and all the House members had their offices in the smaller view. And then now the Senate has their own new office building. That was $90 million, which was a lot. Taxpayers were furious about this. This is $730 million just for members of the House. There are only 134 of us. It's ridiculous.
And you're only in there 5 months out of the year. Okay, so we hear there's going to be a new independent statewide watchdog to stop rampant theft of taxpayer money. We know that there's now a strike team out of the Labor Department going into California to check on the tens of billions of dollars that was already stolen in jobless benefits. Mayor, but let's talk about the welfare frauds in your state. You know these daycare frauds that were shut down? Have you heard any parent complain that these daycares were shut down? Because if they haven't spoken up, isn't that proof that this was all fraudulent activity and theft of taxpayer money?
Yes, we haven't heard a lot of complaints of the ones that have been shut down, but unfortunately, there haven't been many shut down. I gave the department a list of 72 daycares we had concerns about last February, and until the Nick Shirley video came out, I don't think they'd done anything with it. And now they're belatedly ramping up inspections and trying to do site visits, which I'm glad they're doing, but I don't know why it's taken all this attention for them to do their jobs, and it's incredibly frustrating. But I think most of them are still open, so we have to have the pressure on.
I mean, we've got cyber hackers from overseas targeting the U.S. We're looked at as like dupes and idiots overseas that we let this stuff happen.
That's Kristen Robbins, man. There is a lot to watch. In Minnesota, there is a lot of fraud that, to be honest, I don't think we can prevent, but we can try to claw back some of this money that has been wasted when it came to sending money across seas or came to funding political parties. But get up out of here for the day. Here is Brink Trucks, SME, tax-free, and I will see y'all same time, same place tomorrow.
Racks, tell they eyes, nigga. This the biggest shit going on, nigga. Biggest shit in the world. Get under this umbrella. Send me racks on a Benz. Could've bought a Bentley truck. Wild body Hellcat, I got the kit to lift it up. If you hear that vroom vroom, that ain't no car, I'm blending up. Residue all on the counter while I'm fucking pressing up. All this money in my pocket, I'm a walking Brinks truck. Y'all don't like us, team up. The bitch tryna get on my line, heard I pay for new butts. 200 in the air, when they land, we go nuts. Once it's up, then it's stuck. Capping like you buying books, you know these niggas not. I be in the kitchen twisting woo until it lock. And we got the bows, you can't shop if you a cop. Tried to buy some smoke from them just to meet up with my op.